straw poll, in which he asked, do you think the war in Afghanistan is worth fighting? And out of this group of 24 soldiers, none of them felt it was worth fighting. And he also expressed the sentiment that that soldiers were giving him, that they felt that they were fighting for checkpoints and intersections and nothing else.
Camilo Mejia, the big debate around the Rolling Stone piece, what's most being talked about is the name calling, is, you know, which official was called by McChrystal or his staff, what name, you know, whether we're talking about a wounded animal or a clown, whether President Obama, McChrystal felt was uncomfortable or unprepared in a meeting. But that has overshadowed the bigger issue of how the war is going. In the Rolling Stone piece, a senior U.S. Advisor to McChrystal said, quote, if Americans pulled back and started paying attention to this war, it would become even less popular. Yesterday at the U.S. Social Forum, I attended a session that you were all at, talking about the war and what soldiers should do and what people who are, if they're recruited, what they should do. I went across the hallway, and there were some folks who were cleaning the convention center, a man and a woman, and they were sitting there taking a break. And I asked them if they knew what the U.S. Social Forum was about. And the man, an African-American man in his 20s, said that he was sort of interested in what was going on. And I said there was a session right across the hallway about the wars. And he said, do you think I could go into it? And I said, I'm sure you could. He said, because I'm against these wars. Now, that sense of whether Americans are against the war, what are you doing here at this U.S. Social Forum? And how do you advise young people who are recruited or who are weighing the war, or soldiers, what they can do right now?
I think we are all here because we want to participate in this gathering, in this open space gathering with other movements, because I believe that we as anti-war activists need to build bridges with other movements, because we should not be a one-issue organization. We should not be, even movement-wide, we should not be a one-issue movement. I think that anti-war movement should build bridges to work with the immigrant rights movement. I think that we should be fighting poverty. I think that we should be fighting for equality. We should be fighting for all these things, and we should be actually working in coalition with not only grassroots organizations, but within our own communities and people like the young men that you spoke to across the hall from our workshop yesterday. Because in order for us to accomplish our mission, which is the withdrawal from occupied nations and benefits for veterans and reparations to the people of those countries, we are not going to be able to accomplish that unless we build a support network upon which soldiers who are resisting can fall, and that they can be embraced by the civilian community and the civilian movement. And for that, we need to do this kind of work. And I think that the U.S. Social Forum is the perfect place where you can find those people, learn about what they're doing, and build those very important connections to build, you know, a movement that not only goes after one issue, but that aims to, you know, rebuild the system from the ground up.
Victor, Agosto, what do you tell young people who served like you did and are refusing to return? I mean, yesterday there was very practical advice being given in these sessions. People felt they weren't getting accurate information, they didn't have the proper advice, and they were scared.
In terms of soldiers who are
like you, perhaps, served, don't want to go back, or young recruits?
Right, there are many resources available. There's a GI Rights hotline. There's Iraq Veterans Against the War has many resources on its website. There's many options for people who are determined not to deploy. There's conscientious objector status and ways
I don't think most people know. How often, for example, are any of you interviewed in the mainstream media? The debate in Washington is whether, McChrystal should have been fired. It is not whether you should refuse to deploy. How often, for example, Camilo, are you interviewed in the mainstream media?
Not very often at all. I had one interview last month, and before that, I don't remember when was the last time that I spoke with any mainstream media.
Brock McIntosh, you are, like the other guests here today, unusual. You've served in Afghanistan, you've come back, now you're applying for CO status. Are interviewers knocking down your door to talk to you about your situation?
No, because war is a top-down approach, so it doesn't matter what people on the ground think, they perceive.
Do you feel you have support from other soldiers, other people in the Army National Guard?
A lot of my fellow soldiers are either supportive, or at least they recognize my freedom of speech, so they're understanding. There's a few soldiers who have made threats at me, you know, threatening to burn me, whatever that means, but they're all empty threats. But most people have been pretty supportive. So.
Are you afraid to return to Afghanistan?
No, I'm not. I'm just afraid to kill. I would return to Afghanistan as a civilian in a heartbeat.
Today, there's going to be a big anti-war session at the U.S. Social Forum here in Detroit. Among those who will be speaking are, well, Medea Benjamin of Code Pink, who tried to go to Canada yesterday, but she was detained along with another person, and she was turned back. Among those who will be speaking are Colonel Ann Wright. We had Colonel Ann Wright on yesterday, who helped to open the mission in Afghanistan, the embassy, in 2002. Feels, though, the war is wrong. Victor Agosto, what would you say to a young person now who's been recruited out of high school? What would you tell them? What if they're in boot camp and they're changing their mind?
Well, I find that just about anyone who signs up for the military really believes that they are doing something good. So I would basically try to convince them that in reality, instead of being a force for good, they're going to be a force for evil, really, and that the wars aren't making anybody any safer. They're just bringing misery to the people of Afghanistan and Iraq, and that they're drawing away vital resources here at home.
Final comment. Camilo Mejia, you are the former chair of the Iraq Veterans Against the War. As you organize, your thoughts?
Well, I want to speak to the question you just asked, and I want to address service members who are considering not redeploying to either Iraq or Afghanistan, or to, filing a CO claim. In my experience, having fought in Iraq and come back, being court-martialed, applied for CO status and denied so far, and served time in jail. I actually served almost 9 months of a year sentence. I have not spoken with a single war resister who has taken a stance against war and has served time in jail who has any regrets about the decision to speak your mind freely and follow your conscience. I would say to young people in the military to follow their conscience and to not be afraid of jail, because in the end, if they do follow their conscience, they will have no regrets, whatever the consequences.
Camilo Mejia, thank you for being with us. Former Staff Sergeant Victor Agosto served in Iraq, refused to go to Afghanistan, and Brock McIntosh, thank you for being with us. Still active duty, recently came back from Afghanistan. This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute.
Close your eyes.